Have you ever heard that song? You know, the one that goes like,
Annie, are you okay? So Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie?
That's a little known song called Smooth Criminal by obscure pop artist Michael Jackson. You may have assumed the Annie in the song was a reference to someone Jackson knew or was just a made up name for a fictional character in a song, but in fact Annie actually refers to CPR Annie, also known as Rescue Annie or Resusci Anne, the medical doll used to teach CPR. Instruction in its use sometimes begins with checking for response, asking the doll, Annie, are you okay? Before initiating resuscitation attempts. That's kind of a clever line in the song, and even though a lot of people are familiar with both the song and the doll, they may not have made the connection. Another fun fact is that Michael Jackson attended a Queen concert in LA, and after hearing the band perform Another One Bites the Dust, he suggested to Freddie Mercury backstage that the song be released as a single. The bass line in Another One Bites the Dust is about 110 beats per minute, sitting right in the middle of the 100 to 120 chest compressions per minute recommended for resuscitation attempts. As such, the song is sometimes used in training sessions where trainees are encouraged to match the tempo of the song to get the right rhythm for chest compressions. Another thing you might not know is who Annie actually is. CPR Annie's face has been described as the most kissed face in the world. So who owns the face that we're all kissing? Yes, this is a real person's face, and it's actually kind of a sad story. In the late 1950s, CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, was starting to be recognised by the worldwide medical community and was beginning to become standard training for medical students. One of the people involved in the promotion of CPR was Dr. Archer Gordon, a member of the American Heart Association's CPR committee. While overseeing students practice chest compressions on each other, Gordon came to the realisation that this kind of fucking hurts, and if you had a big ox of a fella who didn't know his own strength, someone was liable to get cracked ribs. Gordon thought using some sort of dummy for instruction and practice was probably a better way to go. Through a Norwegian colleague, he reached out to a Norwegian toymaker, Åsmund Laerdal. Lærdal made dolls, funnily enough, but he wasn't a stranger to the medical industry, having made imitation wounds for Red Cross first aid training. When Gordon explained he wanted a dummy to train people in resuscitation, Lærdal was very receptive to the idea, having narrowly saved his young son from drowning just a few years before. Lærdal set about making a torso mannequin for Gordon. He wanted the dummy to have a natural appearance, like a real person. Unfortunately, there's a little more than one human face, so he still had a lot of choices to make in regards to what the dummy would look like. His first choice was that the dummy be female, which he thought would be less threatening to both men and women trainees, believing men would be somewhat reluctant to touch lips with the face of another man. I'm sure whatever he chose would have been an improvement over practicing on real people, but I guess he didn't want non-medical folks thinking CPR is gay. The success of this effort is debatable. So now Lærdal just needed a non-threatening face to put on his non-threatening female dummy. He remembered his grandparents had a model of a woman's face on their wall, and revisiting it, he knew he had his face. It was perfect. A soft-faced female with no overly pronounced or unsightly features, and a peaceful expression that evoked the sense that this person is currently far away, without appearing horrified or frightening. So Lærdal modelled CPR Annie with this face. But where did this face come from, and why was it on his grandparents' wall? To answer this, we have to go back about 100 years to Paris. Around the late 1880s, the body of a young woman was pulled from the River Seine. The body showed no signs of violence, so it was assumed the woman had drowned, with some believing that her death was by her own hand. Now, no one knew who this young woman was. It was estimated she was about 16 years old, but there was really no other information about her. Her body was put on display in a mortuary in hopes that someone would recognise and identify her, but this never happened. A pathologist in the morgue was apparently quite taken by the young woman's face and how she truly appeared to be at peace. He commissioned an artist to make a plaster cast death mask of her face to immortalise her serene appearance in death. Then the cast was reproduced and sold. Something about this doesn't really feel right. It turned out the pathologist was not the only one who saw appeal in a dead teenager's face, because reproductions of the cast became quite popular and it became sort of a fashionable thing to have hanging on your wall, particularly among artists. With so many people recognizing the face and seeing it repeatedly, it gained a name which everyone could identify it with, like the Mona Lisa or the Scream. This morbid piece of art became known as l'inconnue de la Seine, the unknown woman of the Seine. Still to this day, we do not know who this young woman was or how she met her fate, and still to this day you can buy a cast of her face, which is how it ended up on Laerdal's grandparents' wall, and ultimately how it ended up on CPR Annie. The first dolls were pretty simple. They were made of soft plastic with an open mouth to practice mouth-to-mouth and a collapsible chest to practice compressions. But as CPR became more popular outside the medical community, so too did CPR Annie. Today, the dolls, which are still made by Laerdal's company, are much more complex, with features like electronics being added throughout the years, and are now essentially smart devices that can be linked with an app on your phone. It's estimated over 300 million people have practiced CPR with Annie, making it perhaps the world's most kissed face. And to me, there's something about that that's a little creepy. I mean, this is the face of a dead 16-year-old girl, or roughly around that age. There was no consent given to make reproductions of this deceased person's face, or to sell them, and we have no idea how this person would feel about the morbid artwork or CPR Annie. Like, who knows, maybe they'd be absolutely flattered that their face became so famous, and by its use on CPR Annie, that it's become associated with a life-saving medical technique that millions of ordinary people are trained in. But that's the thing, we don't know how this person would feel about any of that. Maybe they'd have preferred to just be forgotten. There's something almost perverse about how their image was used when we don't know anything about the person. But maybe not knowing anything about them makes them the perfect candidate for it. All I know is that the ethical considerations for these things have changed a lot since the 1800s. I can't imagine a pathologist today making a death mask of an unidentified body and allowing it to be reproduced and sold. But times change and ethics evolve, leaving us to try and reconcile things that happened in the past with how we currently view the world. How do we deal with history that was instrumental in bringing us to this point, but is also ethically unacceptable at this point? I don't know. What we really need is someone to help us navigate the morally treacherous sea of the modern world. Someone like Columbus. Overall, the story of l'inconnue de la Seine is quite sad. So many people around the world are familiar with this face, but when she died, she didn't have anybody that cared enough to even identify her body. All we know is the face, but this was a living person who had hopes and dreams, thoughts and opinions, emotions, struggles, triumphs, failures, all the things that make a person human, all lost. All we know is that for a very brief point in Earth's lifespan, this person existed. Only the face remains. But that's all we needed to save countless lives over 100 years later. Kind of sad, kind of uplifting, but all human. If you enjoyed this video, I have many more in a similar style, and you can subscribe to see more in the future. I also upload on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok if you like those platforms too, so please give me a follow. I'll see you next week for the next video, and until then, stay safe. Right in the middle of the 101... We don't know how this person would feel about any of that. Maybe they'd Alright.